D.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And the first bit of business is reorganization of the Board of Selectmen, so I'll pass the gavel
Thank
to Mary
you.
Beth.
Okay. And
Slam it down.
at this time, I would like to ask for nominations for Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
I'd like to nominate Carl as chairman.
Second.
Second.
Third.
Are there any other nominations? Nope. Okay, the nominations are closed. And now we'd like to take a vote. All in favor of having Carl Kowalski as Chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you very much.
congratulations.
Now I get the gavel back, right?
You do, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Don't give it up
Don't
too
break your
long.
glasses.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for the vote of support. It's a job that I enjoy doing, and I thank you very much for that. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded and televised by
A
WHCA.
couple of other officers to,
Oh, I'm sorry. But you know what? I couldn't do the job unless I had this guy sitting beside me who reminds me
I was
every time
ready
I
to third
screw up. Okay. Yes, we need nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Dan.
Is there a second?
Sology.
second.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor for Dan?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations, Dano.
Yeah, thank you.
And for clerk, is there a nomination for clerk?
I nominate Justin.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a board now. We have a board of officers, that's good. And thank you for reminding me of that, Justin.
Well, that's what clerks do.
Yeah.
Okay, and I already announced the meeting's being recorded and televised by WHCA. I'd like a motion now to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
A motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And public forum, is there anyone here who wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Okay. Chairman's report, just would like to mention a couple of things. I'd like to mention that it's been a real pleasure to be the chair of this particular board. This particular board has come together very well over the course of the year. For a lot of reasons, we have heart from Laura, who's not afraid to express it. Dan's unbelievable energy in all the committees that he's on. Justin is really important to me because he lets me know whenever I need to do something, and he also keeps the public well informed by his Facebook and LinkedIn page. And Sean has been a remarkable addition to this board with respect to budgetary concerns.
Yes.
He showed that interest when he was a citizen sitting right over there, and he's been a terrific guy to have on the board too. It's a pleasure to work with this particular board. I'd also like to mention, to remind people of the Firefighters Memorial and Awards on Sunday, June 9th. Starts at 8 o'clock with breakfast at the fire station. And that's all I have. New business, make the fiscal year 25 annual appointments. We have a list of appointments that go from the AAA Advisory Committee through 4 pages down to the Whitman Emergency Management Agency. I'm not going to read them all. They are publicized. There's a list here that's available for people. With one exception, Elaine Malisi has decided not to accept her appointment. And I'd like a vote to vote on those annual appointments.
I'll make that motion.
Second, and then I'd like to clarify one appointment that comes up in capital committee meetings frequently. So Fred Small is up for reappointment this year. I believe 3 years ago, we appointed him as the school committee member appointed by the Board of Selectmen, which is a position on the committee.
Right.
We also have a open, at-large, citizen at-large membership, so I just want to take this opportunity to put to rest the confusion and confirm that he is being appointed as the school committee member on the board.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Okay, it's been been moved and seconded to approve the list. Yes?
Should I abstain since I'm on that list?
Be a good idea.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention.
Thank you.
And we're going to announce board and committee vacancies too. And I could do that. AAA Advisory Committee, we have one alternate delegate vacancy to 2024. Board of Appeals, there's one associate member vacancy, 2026. Capital Committee, one vacancy, 2025. That ends in 2025. Conservation Commission, two vacancies, 2025 to 2027 and 2027, and one alternate member vacancy that would end in 2026. Community Preservation Committee, there's one vacancy, 2026. One vacancy, Conservation Commission representative indefinite. One vacancy, Historical Commission rep indefinite. One vacancy, Recreation Commission rep indefinite. Council on Aging, there's one vacancy for a position up until 2027. Economic Development Committee, one vacancy, Assessors Rep 2025. One vacancy, Board of Appeals Rep 2027. One vacancy, Planning Board Rep 2025. Two vacancies at large, Reps 2026, and terms ending 2026 and 2027. Fair Housing Committee, one vacancy, term ending 2025. Historical Commission, one associate member vacancy, 2025. Recreation Commission, two non-voting members, vacancies, 2025. And the Whitman Cultural Council, one voting member, 2027. So those are board committee vacancies. Just let the Selectmen's office know if you're interested in taking one of them. Next item on the agenda is act on the request of Lori Schisler to hold the La Vida y Bella 5K on Sunday, September 29th, 2024, subject to the route of the race being approved by Chief Hanlon. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Second.
She here?
Any questions? Yes, would you like to say something?
Wasn't prepared to talk. We did, and thank you, we did get this approved last year. It was great. I don't think, Chief, you can let me know if there was any issues. Do you,
Uh-oh, I don't know if this is,
papers.
I don't know if
He's
this is a
got
good sign or a
papers.
bad sign.
No, I'm just going to back her up. There weren't any issues other than the race route, and we've ironed that out, and I think
Okay.
it's going to be the same.
yeah,
Is that
do you want to
correct?
keep it the same? That will work for me.
It worked for us, so.
Yeah,
Great,
It
perfect.
goes around the town park and goes through the boulevard, and
it was great.
Pretty
Honestly, I can't tell you how much my family appreciated you allowing us to do this in this town, where we're all from. It was great. I hope this year is even better, so.
Okay, hope you have
Good day, good weather.
a good day.
I know, right? Knock on wood. Thank you very much.
Okay, has it been moved?
Yep.
Seconded, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Act on the request of Joel C. Thomas to be reappointed to the position of constable in the town of Whitman with no arrest powers through June 27th, 2027, subject to receipt of an updated public officials bond. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Chief Hanlon to appoint William Watson to the position of Auxiliary Special Police Officer through June 30th, 2025. Chief?
I think I gave you a bit of an update to the board. And so Bill Watson is retired from the Massachusetts State Police. He did crime scene for a lot of years. We've worked together on several incidents in town over the years, and we always work well together, and I think that's going to continue.
Okay.
And he lives in town, so it's kind of a
Thank you.
home run for him and a home run for us, too.
Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act to accept the resignation of Elaine Bergeron as Historical Commission Representative to the Community Preservation Committee, effective upon reorganization of the Historical Commission. Is there a motion?
So moved with regret?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the application of Bora Lim to change the name of the business on the common vittler's license on the premises located at 11 South Avenue to Chambora Incorporated, doing business as Thai All Seasons. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And act to rescind the common vittler's license for Thai All Seasons Incorporated on the premises located at 11 South Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good Energy Services Agreement. Mary
Yes,
Beth.
Mr. Chairman. So we did have this before the board several months ago, and it was voted to award the contract to Good Energy for municipal aggregation services. So it was just pending the attorney's final draft of the agreement. We have gone back and forth, and that is finalized. I sent that out to the board, but here's 2 original copies. I have them tabbed out. So if you vote this, if you could sign this. We also do have John O'Rourke with us this evening from Good Energy, so if anybody has any specific questions, he'd be happy to address those for us.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Yes.
I do. I just think it might be helpful. There has been some recent negative attention. I think the article, or was it in the Globe and on WBUR? It might be helpful just to speak against some of the myths about maybe the community aggregate versus like some of the recent trouble with the individuals who run into some.
Are you referring to some of the retail electricity sellers that, or marketers that?
Taking advantage of people and that kind of thing.
Totally different situation. And certainly for those towns that do become aggregated, those calls and those visits basically get reduced because those marketers understand that it's under an aggregation, and they usually don't bother people as much. They're always going to bother the seniors, and essentially what we do is we're putting the plan out, and we're talking to senior centers and other public meetings. We emphasize to them not to ever give out their account number to anybody over the phone or anybody who comes to their door. And essentially most of that situation is reduced. But there has been some real problems with those retailers of electricity services.
So kind of on the individual level, there's some trouble, but on the community level, they're actually finding that things are going really well, if I understand.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You as well.
And do you want to give
Are those done, Daya?
yeah, if you grab John, we'll, Sean needs to sign it, but,
Just need it in one copy.
yeah. Take it with you.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Finally, under new business, the South Shore Tech update on the building project. You've been very patient.
Not at all, Mr. Chair. Keeping up a swift pace, I'll try to not slow down the average of the agenda items here. Thanks for having me. So it's been a few months, and from December when we had a public forum here in this same room to now, I appreciate the opportunity to give you an update where we stand. I've thrown in a few other items for the update, including a quick slide on admissions, because enrollment does support a lot of the conversation about how enrollment connects to debt share when it comes to a school building project, and also make mention that we are continuing to work on a regional agreement amendment that will also have a connection to the building project. Oops. Sorry about that. Paul, is this, excuse me just a second. Very well. on the fly. Here we go. Thanks very much. So this Saturday, let's hope for dry weather, we're graduating 43 seniors from Whitman from our class of 2024. And as of today, with our admissions process largely settled in for our incoming 9th grade class, we have 31 Whitman students. Very strong demand from the community. We had 70 applications from the town of Whitman. I point this out because my anticipation is that with the addition of a new community, Marshfield, starting this fall, and with our school being approximately the same size, I would anticipate that Whitman, as the largest sending district, sending community, those numbers will probably drop for a period of time because there are fewer unused seats. So all the numbers on this slide essentially say Whitman is apportioned a number of seats based on the size of their 8th grade population. They fill those seats within a nanosecond, and then there are other seats from the waiting list from communities that don't use all their seats. Why does this slide matter? It connects because debt share is tied to enrollment. And so, again, my projection is there will continue to be very high demand, but with fewer unused seats. I would be saying the same thing if I were speaking to folks in Rockland or in Abington or in Hanson as well. So that's the latest. October 1 reports, as you well know, are the official reports. Things can change, but I think we're in the infield of the ballpark in terms of making a projection. So when I'm coming forward to you with a fiscal 26 budget, looking at just the operating assessment, our general track record has been that as long as there's not a really large capital budget, a decrease in enrollment generally means a decrease in the operating assessment. And you can go back to YouTube and hear me say that in case I say something different, in December, but it's generally true. It's generally true. On to the MSBA project. That's our project website at the top, southshoretechproject.com. We've got a few homework assignments remaining in this calendar year. We're in the middle of schematic design. We've got to have it done by mid-August, and then the project team finalizes it, turns it into MSBA at the end of August. We will hopefully be in front of the MSBA Board of Directors for their approval on October 30th. That will be the first day that we can say without qualification or an asterisk that this is the project budget, this is how much the grant is. But by the time we turn it in August, we should be able to take those early projections and be able to say, we are estimating that we're going to get this for reimbursement. We're estimating the project cost. So the updates that I can provide the board in writing periodically, if necessary through the summer, would be on tweaking our schematic design and the work we're doing there. Following the board approval in late October, we lead to a January 25th district-wide ballot question. This is where all voters in all 9 communities go to the polls at the same time, on the same day, and they vote on whether or not they will approve the project. It's an aggregate vote. It's not town-specific, and that vote is limited to, do you support the project or not? And what I point out in the second dash there is, this is a separate matter that each community will have to take up, would be how the project gets funded if it's approved. And it's, I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say that for most of our communities, it would likely be a debt exclusion matter, as the amount of cost, the cost for this is something that simply can't be absorbed under the levy limit. I'll mention borrowing. I have a slide on borrowing a little bit later, but if this passes, then we begin our deeper design, 2 years of construction. The borrowing phases in through fiscal 29. We're working concurrently right now on a regional agreement. I'm in touch with some of the folks from the DESI regional office, Chris Lynch and Michelle Griffin. They're working with me on some language where we would adjust the part of our regional agreement that talks about debt apportionment. Right now, it's a fixed debt share based on whenever the debt is authorized. And we're looking to move it to a 4-year rolling average, which would allow for changes in debt share based on changes in enrollment with not a lot of volatility. For a community like Whitman, which has a high share of the current population and a 30-year debt issue, and we know enrollments fluctuate. So I think the idea has merit, and ideally, for communities that are having a special town meeting in the fall, we would like to get this in front of as many communities as possible to be able to let the communities weigh in on it. If we secure 2/3 of our communities to support this, it would essentially become a change to our regional agreement. So more to be said on that as we get a little further into the summer. I've asked the Department of Ed to work with me on trying to get something that I can bring back through our school committee to our towns by the end of the summer. But at least I'll be asking for placeholders in the event that there are articles. Sean?
And you're confident that that's going to be the case?
confident that DESI will be on board with it.
Or can you predict any big obstacles to that, or?
I've heard virtually nothing. In other words, most of our regional agreement is already in a pay-as-you-go approach. Whenever we're funding costs over the minimum local contribution, we use the most recent October 1 report, so that adjusts. And when we build capital expenses into our budget, we use we do a 3-year look back, a 3-year rolling average. So my argument is, this is actually just bringing that last piece of our formula in line by making it as a modified pay-as-you-go.
It would have to be 2/3, you said, in order for this to be accepted by the member communities?
Yep, so we would need 6 out of 9 communities to agree to that amendment.
Any feedback from that?
No negative feedback at this point. The messaging from the last several months has been, whether it's a community that has a large current share or a small current share, when you look back at historical data on enrollment, everybody's community enrollment changes at some point. And with an adjustment in enrollment, it affects operating assessments, but I think the argument is that in 1960, when this agreement was written, and we've amended the agreement twice in the last 7 years, but this was written, I think, in such a way when the original 6 communities it was for the school. So we were building a brand-new school, 1960, and now we're talking about a project that has big cost and a big impact if it were fixed for 30 years. So I would say to you right now, I'm not hearing any reason to suggest that we wouldn't secure the 2/3 of towns that we need to support it.
That's great, because I think Whitman specifically is in a very vulnerable situation, and it would be, not a deal breaker for me, but I would have a hard time supporting the project if the regional agreement wasn't amended.
Right. And I have a later slide on this, but since you're speaking to it now, I'll touch on it. If things were to stay exactly as is, with the arrival of Marshfield, I'll have a slide that shows you that over the next 4 years, with Marshfield's inaugural freshman class of about 29 students, that's about 4%. So I'm going to project for you that even if this were to remain fixed, which again, I don't think it will, every community's share will adjust down by what I will project as 4%, 8%, 12%, and 16%. Now, if we factor in a declining enrollment on top of bringing on a 9th community, we should see some relief from communities that feel like they're at a high water mark with enrollment. So while this is a good idea regardless of the future of this project, there is, at least by bringing on another community, we will see adjustments in debt share or enrollment share, because our school size through 2028 won't change. I'll just remind folks when I get to that slide there. A few pretty pictures again. This is a drone's eye view, I suppose, of the current rendering. That's on the back part of our property, hopefully opening for a 28-29 school year. And now I'm in the back of the property looking out toward Route 123 Webster Street. The building is in the back, parking in the middle, and fields near the front of the property. Very similar slide to what I would have shown you at a previous meeting. And then the next few slides are just to look at what each floor of the building would look like. First floor here, again, Webster Street would be at the top, so you're pulling into a parking lot. We have an entrance, so you can come in. You're going to dismiss your child. You're going to go to our school restaurant. You're going to go to the salon. Veterinary science is also in a front-facing spot. So the first floor is mainly our vocational programs that either have a public focus or they need a high bay, automotive, plumbing, et cetera. That would be our first floor. Dining commons, student commons area in the middle. And you don't see a gymnasium here on the first floor because of the limited site. We have it stacked. So on the second floor, things begin to get a little more traditional in terms of what you'd expect to see in a high school. Classrooms, science labs, and a few vocational programs that don't require a high bay shop. Graphics, design, visual communications. CIT is computer infotech and allied health. And we have a partial third floor, which will include our electrical program. That's our largest program. They need a high bay, so you can't do that on the second floor. So it's first or third, and they drew the short straw. But they get their own floor, so that's how we're selling it to them, along with some classrooms as well. From the time we started the schematic design process, the footprint of the school is a little bit smaller, which is good. I think we have a very responsive project team that is, my standing joke is I do not want this school design to be on the cover of Architectural Digest. I would like it on the cover of Anti-Tax Monthly or something like that. We don't want to have people paying a lot of money for a cardboard box. We want something that's efficient, and if we're going to put the money into this, it's got to be into the specialized educational spaces. So it's a very simple design, easy for supervision. I'm pleased with the progress. I would expect that when we're done with schematic design, of course, the level of detail we can provide will be obvious. We have to give a lot of detail, as you probably saw as you went through the middle school project. But we're at a good spot right now, and we're on track to meet those deadlines by mid-August. A couple of slides on money. Left column is what I just showed you. Right column is what would we have to do to the building if we are not able to secure the first option. I'm very careful to point out that in the right-hand column, this is not to suggest that something is going to happen immediately. But I think you would have heard this for any time there's a school building project, that the alternative to doing the preferred option is your building that was built in 1962, you have code needs, you have other upgrades. So the left-hand column is, okay, the local share is $176 million. That's our current projection. The right-hand column is, if we don't have a preferred option without MSBA support, we're probably looking at $110 million, not adjusted for escalation. It probably means a slightly smaller school if the whole school were brought up to code. The plumbing and veterinary science programs, would not be an option. And even if that were to happen, the mechanics that I'm looking at for myself is, how do we, my first question to the team is, okay, so how do I chunk that? Like, what if we had to do the $110 million route? If you upgrade more than 30% of your building, the value of 30% of your building, it triggers ADA code requirements. Our building is valued at a little under $25 million. So if we do more than $8 million of repairs in a 3-year period, it would trigger other code upgrades. So where my head is right now is that no matter what column it ends up being, and even if we can take the right-hand column and stretch it out, we're still talking millions. We're still talking who can fit these costs under the levy limit. So I'm looking forward to the left-hand column being more specific by August. And I'm going to be asking our project team to tell a better story on not a better to make the numbers better, but a more precise story on the right-hand column. The school roof is not going to fall in if this project fails. I'm not going to advertise doom and gloom, fait accompli, it's got to be changed. But I do want to try to map out a 5 to 7 year sequence of if either path were to happen, where would we be in 2030? Where would we be in 2031? So for now, I think it's a good comparison, but I would just put a pin in this until we can get better information to you by the middle of August. Taking it just down 1,000 feet here to take a look at Whitman. These are my projections here, so apologies in advance. But based on some numbers that I've looked at, our Unibank folks are suggesting, and our project team is saying, okay, you get this project, what happens in the first year? Even if it's approved in fiscal 25, we're not doing anything. We'll start the borrowing, but we won't be paying anything with interest in that fiscal year. So I'm projecting, based on what people smarter than me are saying, that if we borrow $20 million in fiscal 26 and only pay the interest, I can say right now, based on the way that the agreement is written, that Whitman's share of that would be about $186,000. So in fiscal 26, when I'm bringing you a regular budget request, that would be the first step toward our communities paying for borrowing. Now, why are those numbers so small? That's taking about $186,000 and saying if you wanted to have an apples-to-apples comparison of how the costs go up, depending on how it's borrowed. So I'll use that first number. It's kind of silly, but okay, $44 level principal minus $2 in red. Where does that coupon come from? That's the Marshfield offset. There's that 4%. There's that freshman class. They begin to have an increasing share of the cost. I have no reason to change that 4% for right now. There's a high margin of error, but I'm going with that as our only data set that we have. So the numbers in bold print as you go down would be phased-in borrowing. So the highest high water mark, if you're willing to make a few assumptions, we're assuming 3.75% borrowing. We're assuming Marshfield comes in, and I haven't done anything to Sean's earlier point about the, adjusting fake enrollment numbers, so I'm just using that share of 24.25 for the purposes. If we do adjust, I think those numbers would come down slightly, nothing that would jump off the page, but going from 24% share maybe down to 19 or 20% share, if we were to play around with what the cost share would be from bringing on our new community. So that is the latest thinking, best guess. We will revise this the closer we get, but it's important for us to share at least what we're thinking right now. Justin.
So you mentioned Unibank. We have the same bond counsel, and we went through this process with the middle school project, but have they given you an indication on whether they'd advise you to do level principal versus level payments on a long-term borrowing?
No. I think the general practice is level principal saves our municipalities money in the long term, and level payments maybe gets the project in under the burden that communities are facing with the hopes of better financing. What, 10 years, maybe you can refinance something?
I think it's 10 years.
8 to 10 years, right.
Yeah.
So the short answer is no, but that is certainly something, and that's why putting that up, it's not really I guess it's not really a range, it's if we went with one path or the other. But no, nothing specific yet.
Yep, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
So I know with the Empowerment Act for Governor Healy that they're looking at school buildings being able to go out 40 years. Is that something?
I saw that in the bill as well. I took note of that.
I did for a couple of projects. So would that be something that you would look at? And I don't really like the thought of going out 40 years, but on these huge projects, it would make a big difference.
If that were an option, I think like with a lot of what we're doing here, having applied for 7 years now, and the timing isn't ideal. If that weren't on the books at the time that we're making this move, I would hope that we could advocate for, that the legislation would reflect our ability to go back and readjust that. So we're thinking 30, but if that option were 40, I think we would want to talk through how that could make it more affordable initially and then see where it goes. I'm hoping 3.75 won't be the case by the time we get into some of this heavier borrowing. We're not going to know that before we're asking the voters to weigh in January, but we will at least tell folks what so many assumptions being made here, but that's kind of an outside lane, like that could help provide some relief. It stretches out payments, of course, but this is a project that should last minimum 50 years. So we're into, mid-60s, but with our current building, but it's definitely on my radar.
Awesome.
Mary Beth, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
If I may.
Yes.
Looking at this project, one of the main things we're looking at is enrollment. I mean, to go from 600, having a school that's basically built for 600, but we're stuffing 678 kids in there,
670s,
students in there,
Yeah.
which makes it tight to go and tell families that if you can see how many kids are allowed to come from Whitman to go to Central Votech, and we have to deny so many, right? So we can't give an education to students, the ones that they're looking for, because we don't have the room. With the new high school, with the new vocational school, we'll have that room to be able to give each student what they're looking for. And did you want to go over the numbers that we came up with looking at? Yeah. Good news is in 2027, our budget for Whitman-Hanson project, the school, is completed. And that was costing us $351,648.77. So that'll go away in 2027, right?
2027 will be the last payment.
The last payment. And then if you go the last payment in 2030 for the police station, right, that's $494,400. So those two projects are going to be ending, the first one around about when hours start for Central Votech, and it also covers our middle school that we're putting on. So, I mean, it's almost like what we're paying now, we'll end up with a new middle school and a new vocational school at the same cost that it's costing the taxpayers at Whitman. That's how I read it. Mary Beth, you look at it that way?
Well, debt will be rolling off.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. We
Yeah.
haven't seen, of course, the final Whitman Middle School debt.
Right.
But you're correct.
Yeah.
We will be adding more debt as this is rolling off, which is
Yeah.
not a bad thing.
Right, so one debt is being paid off and a new one comes in, and it's at the same cost, but almost, to the taxpayers. I mean, I couldn't have a better scenario than that happening.
There's limited good financial news these days, I'll
Yeah.
take it. Those offsets probably wouldn't cover our share, but it's why we want to ask our communities about their debt schedules. And you folks do a great job of long-range forecasting. So when we're looking, we want to be able to make sure that we have a sense of what each of our communities are doing. That's helpful. So I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Sean?
I think just for perception purposes, although that debt is going to be rolling off, the debt that we're taking on is much, much, much bigger than what's coming off. So it isn't like one's coming off, the other's coming on, and the taxpayer won't feel much of a difference. The debt that we're taking on is significantly bigger than the debt that's coming off.
True, but if you look at what we're thinking that it's gonna cost the town of Whitman for that, and what's coming off, it's around the same.
No, and maybe we could do some
We could.
analysis to help
Yeah.
with that perception, but I support the project. I think this is badly needed. I think you do a very good job. I love all the numbers. I do have a concern about the regional agreement, but it seems like it's being taken care of, but this is another big nut to take on, just to be forthcoming with everybody.
Glass half full, there's debt rolling off. I can't say that's going to be the case in all of the 9 communities we have there at different points. This Plymouth County assessment is also something I'm hearing communities say that there's an assessment that's rolling off.
That's correct, in
yeah, that-
2029, that
yeah.
will be rolling.
I don't know the details about that, but
Right.
I've had other communities say that the timing of that might be helpful as well. So yeah, thank you for indulging me on this, and certainly we'll refine these numbers and share. This slide here, just again on the regional agreement, that box kind of encapsulates, when Marshall was brought into the district, they're essentially on a pay-as-you-go model, their most recent October 1 reports. And the plan in the middle of that box says what I had already said in the presentation, so I won't belabor the point, that we look to move to a 4-year adjustable average. The benefit is that it's more of a pay-as-you-go model over time, and by using rolling averages, it eliminates the volatility that comes with changes in enrollment. But if we wanted to take a snapshot right now, and doing a 3-year look back of our communities, with the exception of Marshfield not having any enrollment history, that's where the 3-year look back enrollment averages look right now. So as I said earlier, my anticipation would be that communities like Whitman would see a lower share, at least through 28, 29. So if we're plotting this, we'd see a dip, a bottom out, and then off to the races after 28, 29, if we're in a larger building, depending on where the interest is. And long term, we have other communities that are not affiliated with us that could be considered to enlarge the district and cost share even further.
Sean, you?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but 4 years from now, what do you anticipate our percentage to be? Roughly.
20?
You think so, 4 years from now? Not the current percent share, but I mean actual student enrollment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
percentage.
Okay, so I would say that what we're seeing for this upcoming fall cohort, if we make one of the analyses I'm doing is I'm taking all the current enrollments from all of our towns, most recent SIMS data from kindergarten up, and I'm pretending that there'll be no fluctuations and no one moves for the next 9 years. And I'm looking at town shares. So when I said to you on the earlier slide that Whitman got an allotment of 20 out of 180, I'm going to say that that's going to be pretty stable. So if we reported last October 1 that we had 165 Whitman students, which was 40-something kids a year on average, I think the number that you're seeing earlier in the presentation at 30 or 31, I think it might be closer to that. So we're going to be graduating Whitman cohorts this Saturday, next year, the year after that, with numbers, I think, in the 40s, and possibly bringing in cohorts that might be in the 30s. That number could be lower if there's a spike in demand from from other communities. Cohasset and Norwell historically don't fill the seats. Abington, Hanson, Whitman, and Rockland do, and Hanover and Situate are wild cards. So if I'm answering your question, I'd say 120 versus 165.
Right, but not quite answering my question. I don't think I'm asking appropriately. And I don't mean to keep pushing, but I do think it's an important point. Right now, Whitman's using about 25% of all available seats.
Yes.
But realistically, with the new building, more communities are going to want to have access to it. And Marshfield's coming in. And what are the amount of seats that we actually have available to us by right, in a sense? I don't know.
It would be, it's, the number isn't fixed, it's based on whatever the 8th grade population is. So in a class of 180, which is the current 9th grade class, Whitman's apportionment is 20, and that percentage is based on the 8th grade population. So even in a larger building with a larger freshman class, it would still be based, we would still continue to use the formula that we've always used.
Sure. Maybe just use the percent comparison. What percent of seats in the current school do we have by agreement? If we didn't use any other town seats, what would the percentage be?
20 out of 180 is 1/9. Can someone do that for me? 11%.
Right. So right now, we're using about 25%, but by right, we only have about 11 to 12%.
If every town used their allotment, you're absolutely correct.
Right. So it's conceivable that with the new building, 4 or 5 years from now, more towns will want to participate, and we're bringing in Marshfield. So realistically, our number's going to go from 25 to closer to 12%. And if
I could counterfactual there, do any towns does the school turn away more students from any town other than Whitman? I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Rockland, Whitman, our waiting list historically
Yeah.
is made up of kids from Whitman, Rockland, and Abington. In the last 3 years, if you had asked me 3 years ago, I would have said that Situate and Hanover regularly do not fill their seats. So to Sean's point, will we see an increase of interest in historically under-enrolled communities? There's a possibility. But I don't have any reason to think that Cohasset, based on just historical data, would fill. But I do think that you're at a high water mark because year after year of a high demand and available seats. When those leftover seats are no longer available, that's where you start to see that reduction you're describing.
Right. And to bring it back to the regional agreement, if we don't change the regional agreement, we're stuck paying 25% of the debt for the next 30 or 40 years.
Right.
But with the rolling admission, that would likely decrease down closer to the 12%, saving us a significant amount of money.
It would, yes. So if we didn't change this regional agreement, my projection would be that Marshfield, at some point, that TBD would become 15 or 16%. We would give a 15 or 16% haircut to all of those percentages. But with an adjustable approach, we can also more accurately identify who's using the resources of the building over a period of time. That's why it's important that this amendment is approved, and I think people see the merit in it. 30 years is a long time to project out who will have an interest and when. And while with enrollment going down, you might see a drop in operating costs, that does not compare to the cost of a new building.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mark.
Do you anticipate more people wanting to come in from Cohasset or from these towns because of your adding the veterinary services? The veterinary field has no vets right now, and that might be something where you didn't offer it before, that other people would want to join in. And right now, we're in such hard times. Many people are not choosing college, and they are looking for schools such as yours. So wouldn't that make you more optimistic? I feel very optimistic. Seeing the current data on jobs and what people are looking to do, and what's available to them now in your school that wasn't before, if this goes through.
That's a great point. I think a veterinary science program helps to address the agricultural school option as the only option for kids in our section of Plymouth County to have to travel there. I think we will see interest from all the communities. I wouldn't necessarily say it would come from Cohasset or Norwell or under-enrolled communities, but we know there's a labor demand for both plumbing and veterinary science, and we think that we would be able to fill both programs. My guess would be that we would see the interest in, I don't think either program would change the trajectory from a particular community necessarily.
Even with the changing times and the communities themselves changing, with a lot of the MBTA commuter rail things changing,
The data,
dynamics.
right, the data suggest Situate and Hanover are responding to your comment. Their enrollment, Hanover's enrollment in the school has doubled in the last 4 years. Situate is at its highest enrollment share right now. That could, there could be blips. But if I'm looking at trends, I would say I have 3 types of communities. I have oversubscribed communities that we've talked about, and I have historically under-enrolled communities, and then communities like Hanover and Situate are recent. I think they're more approaching the interest where they're using that allotment. But I do, so I think that will vary. Offering 2 new programs that kids cannot get anywhere else, I think parents and kids will certainly pay attention to that. And the key is that it has to have a labor market demand or it's not worth the investment. I think we will have that in both. But rest assured, I certainly drill into these numbers often to try to see if it tells a story, because we'll be asking people to make decisions, and we need to have reasonable projections, labeling as much as we can as this is a fact and this is a projection. So I appreciate your questions on this. It helps to sharpen future presentations so we can drill into what our boards want to hear most about.
Well, we're in unprecedented times, so you never know what will happen.
Thank you. And my final slide is just a summary. Marshfield joins as of July 1st. We turn in our homework assignment on schematic design. We bring in the 9th graders at the end of August. Regional agreement language gets approved by DESE. We start presenting that to our communities. MSBA project approval late October. It becomes official. Hopefully by the end of November, most of our communities have had a special town meeting so we can take up the regional agreement amendment, and then we have the district-wide vote. And that's where things stand right now. And Mr. Chair, if I may, if I may go off track for 1 second, I want to just share with you that I was at an event this morning at Laura Center for the Arts. It was a State of the Town event for the town of Hanover. Okay, and their community preservation folks made a presentation. They're envisioning redoing the park area that's behind the Sylvester School and the Center School on 123, if you're familiar with that area. And the second or third slide in, they spent several minutes focused on Whitman Town Park as their model, and that their goal is to replicate Whitman Town Park in Hanover. And so they went out of their way to look at the park, and I said, I'm going to that zip code tonight, and I'm going to take a minute and just share that. So they were very complimentary of the town park. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks, everybody.
It elicited a lot of conversation, and I think a lot of great information.
And I did not help your meeting average, but thanks just the same.
There's a copy of the sheet we were talking about.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
And next item on the agenda is old business, act on the request of Chief Clancy to increase rates for ambulance service.
It's been several years since we've even looked at this, since before I took the chief, working with the ambulance company, ambulance billing company, and talking with some other communities. As you can, I sent it, my admin sent it to Mary Beth earlier. I hope it was distributed. I believe it was. As you can see, we have marginal increases on this. There's nothing sky high on this. It includes some of the ancillary costs that we bill for anyways. It's just kind of fine tuning it. The one thing I wanted to show you is the increases aren't going to be detrimental to anybody. They'll be absorbed by the ambulance company. A question that was posed to me previously was, how does this affect Medicare and Medicaid patients? Medicare and Medicaid pay what they pay. That's just how it works. And then we do an assessment at the end of the year. But for being so long and having the cost of our expenses and everything go up, we just took a look at it, and we feel the schedule for BLS, ALS1, and ALS2 it is a marginal increase, but we'll, start the fund, bring in the funds that we should be generating on normal expenditures through the insurance companies.
Yes.
I can say something.
We have a motion to make these changes, and then we can talk about it.
I'll second.
Okay. John?
I'm just going to say thank you for doing this. People don't realize the benefit that you had on the budget in doing these kind of things, and it was certainly didn't go unrecognized by me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And it was surprising when Town Administrator Carter brought it up to me. I'm like, when have you looked at these? And I'll be honest with you, it was before I was chief. And it was one of those quick things that we sat down, we did our research, we did our diligence on it to find it, and then to see where we're at. And I think these are more than reasonable increases.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, then all those in favor of the increases?
Aye.
Okay. Good job, Chief. Act on the request of Treasurer Collector Ken Lytle to increase demand fees. This is something that was brought up at the last meeting.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. So this was tabled at the last meeting until we had a full board. The treasurer collector is looking to increase the fees from $15 to $25. The cap is $30. The last time, well, it looks like the fee was raised in 2013 from $5 to $10, and in 2020 from $10 to $15. He just did a little scenario here that if the increased rate was put into effect in fiscal '23, it would have brought in an extra $47,700 in revenue to the general fund and $5,200 to the enterprise fund. Now, this is for bills that go beyond the due date. Normally, he would wait at least a week or two before he even looked at putting out a demand. So that's what he'd like to do for the budget as well, but certainly it's up for discussion.
Okay. Discussion is ready to be had again. Did you want to say something, Laura?
Yes. I understand that to run a town, we need to have these finances. And I do appreciate what we've just voted, because insurance pays for these. These more come out of people's pockets that are having hard time. And that doesn't sit well with me. But I feel there was a reason that I voted you in as chairman, and there was a reason that I voted him, Dan, not him, but Dan in as vice. A lot of people are very upset about what they're paying, and, they think that they say no to something, and then it just gets turned around and is on something else, and they put the blame, and a lot of blame recently came on this board. And I firmly believe and know that in the times that we're in, everyone is in the whole world, not just here. And I feel very strongly that all of your votes will matter, and you'll decide, because I trust you all to make, or I wouldn't have put you in the seats you're in. I think you deserve them. But I'm going to abstain from this vote as a message to the other people in the town that if they truly love this town, and I mean truly love this town, that we can work together this year, next year, and the years coming forward, and do better communicating and respecting each other and bringing the revenue that a town needs to run properly with fire, and police and all of the departments well-funded. And I think cooperation and understanding and commitment to the vision of this town running properly is important, and no infighting and no other type of things. So I'm going to abstain, because I can't, I want to help everybody that can't pay this bill, and I can't. So I'm going to abstain as a message to everybody that from here on forward, I want to work together. Not this board, because like you said earlier, I love this board. I have high respect, and I think we all work together with very different ideas and talents, and it brings great joy and pride to me. but I want everyone. There are other people that work, and we need to work together to find best solutions for funding this town. And if that is acceptable legally for me to do, is abstain, if for that reason.
Certainly is, thank you. Anyone else like to talk about this issue?
Yes, I would, I think. Now, the increases is how much, going up, how much?
$10 from 15 to 25.
From 15 to 25. Is there, would we consider from 15 to 20?
I'm sure Ken would be amenable to that.
I mean, it's where we haven't increased in so long that maybe we can go from 15 to 20 and not 25. That way, it'll help out what Laura's talking about, but yet, if it's needed to be done, it's need to be done. I mean, our fees are so minimal. You know, I mean, we very rarely increase them. So maybe we may want to do that.
I'll make that motion.
It's an idea.
Okay, you want
I'll support Dan's.
to basically amend the ask
Sure, I'll make that
to
motion.
an increase of only $5 instead of $10.
Increase of $5.
Okay, so Sean made the motion,
I'll second
you seconded. I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting, but I did watch the meeting, and I was moved by Laura's plea to not put more of a burden on the people who have a burden already. And that made sense to me. It made sense to me. However, and I'm really happy that Dan is making a motion that comes in the middle of the two. I would support it. Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll go up $5.
Okay, I will let the
And
treasurer
one
know.
abstention.
And one abstain on just to have it there.
That worked out well.
And I like that very much, Dan.
Split the baby.
Town administrators report.
Yes, I just have a couple of items. Let's see. The first one is we have some good news that we're currently in the second interview phase with an excellent candidate for the town accountant. It's my hope to have a candidate to bring to the board for appointment at our next meeting on June 18th. And the plan would be to have the new town accountant begin employment on June 24th. So that would be great. And the other item is Red Cross has contacted us for a blood drive. And so I would be interested, if the board approves, to possibly hold this, over the summer, maybe in August. Would be a great time to partner with Red Cross for a blood drive. Every 3 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs a blood product. The blood drive would run for approximately 5 hours. They'd need time, an hour at the beginning for setup and an hour at the end for tear down. But maybe a Tuesday where we even cross into a little later than 4 to get people after they come home from work or whatever.
In the main auditorium.
In the
Where
main
we've had it in the
auditorium.
past.
Correct, and we haven't had one in many years, so I thought this would be a nice idea.
I've done it all the time. I can't anymore because I'm on blood thinners, so I can't do it anymore.
Okay,
Yeah, neither can I.
Sorry.
It's tough,
I mean,
it's tough to get old.
yeah.
Can't even give blood. Okay, okay, fine. Thank you very much. We need to go into executive session. We have 3 of them that are on the agenda. If I can find them.
It's around.
Yes, let me see this book. Thank you.
You haven't, no.
Executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Exception A, 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of a police department employee. We're also going to go into an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of a different police department employee. And then the last one is an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 3, for the purpose of discussing strategy as it relates to collective bargaining and litigation with the Whitman Police Union, Mass Cop Local 494, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we'll be we'll be coming back into open session only to adjourn.